YouTube video about the mythology about aluminum causing Alzheimer's. Aluminum is abundantly distributed in our environment. It has been around since humans and other animals have existed. It's found in most living things, period, full stop. It's one of the largest constituents in the dust you breathe or the plant matter you consume. Compounds containing aluminum have been used in manufacturing, in clays, very important that you pay attention to that, glass, and alum for centuries. Despite its abundance, it was first isolated as an element in 1827 and being a silver metal purified in 1886. And Alzheimer's existed before then. Well, what about, and then a bunch of complaints. Bentonite clay is used to make cast iron skillets. There are variations in bentonite clay, but usually they're mixed. All of them contain potassium, sodium, calcium, and aluminum. Aluminum is a tramp metal that is found in almost all irons because it's in the clay that it's fired in. It's in the bentonite that you use to mold it. It's in the scrap metal we've been recycling since the beginning of the ability to do this. Digging up iron versus just recycling old iron pieces at the foundry where you're making it, we've been using and reusing it for a while. Also, the materials that are used to contain it while you're heating it contain aluminum and all these other elements. So where did this bullshit come from? Two sources. I'm going to bring up one of them that's notable, and then I'm going to bring up the apocryphal one that literally no one wants to cite anymore. But I want to point out that you're going to find a lot of homeopaths and other assholes talking about using bentonite clay to get rid of aluminum when you leach it out of it into your system from it. Why? Because they lie, and also they found out bentonite clay is used to make cast iron skillets, and it contains aluminum, so they started marketing it as a way to leach out the aluminum, as a way to counter the fact. We have to deal with the narrative here. Salesmanship. People who make money off of your ignorance are going to make sure you stay ignorant. 1965, aluminum was supposed to cause neurofibrillary tangles in brains. And this is an accidental discovery. They oopsed. Now, stop for a second and realize this was an experiment of some sort that was not attempting to find out what causes Alzheimer's. It wasn't even trying to find out of anything causing any kind of problem with animals. It was a different type of experiment. Immunochemical procedure. That means testing immune system responses. Attempting to determine localization of antibodies in the brain of rabbits. What has that got to do with Alzheimer's? Abso-fucking-lutely nothing. Accidentally discovering a new filament for a light bulb? Okay. But accidentally discovering a proof while you're doing a controlled experiment on a completely unrelated thing means that it's not likely to be useful unless you can immediately reproduce it. And it was never reproduced. Somebody's going to cite this. It's one of the first things that comes up. So what did they do? They injected aluminum salts through the skull into the brains of rabbits. And this, of course, drilling a hole in their skull and injecting it with anything at a high enough dosage to get a response quickly because they didn't want to wait and see what happened. Bioaccumulation to be damned, let's just blast them. Induced cognitive deficits in association with the formation of neurofibril material and aluminum-induced dialysis and basically brain swelling. And conventional silver staining tests seemed similar to the tangles seen in Alzheimer's brains. Except with Alzheimer's, it has a very creeping, slow effect over very many large number of years and is always rumored to be caused by some bioaccumulation of something. Meanwhile, you could just inject through the skull into a rabbit's brain and get a reaction rapidly. You know, like the aluminum salts in 1965 were known to do to cause an inflammatory response. As for the tangles, obviously they tried to reproduce this test to see if this would actually be a cause and effect thing rather than them just screwing up an experiment, which is what actually happened here. They were doing one experiment and ended up with a different, totally unrelated result. When it was done again, it was later found not to induce any of these fibril changes, so that's gone. And it wasn't similar to any fiber forming changes inside of a human brain because they didn't fucking happen in the rabbits in the first place. Because they did conventional silver staining tests and got a false result because they weren't studying human brain neurology. They were studying viruses and bacteria responses by causing an inflammatory response in the brain to cause a brain swelling in a rabbit. So, to review, part of peer review is reproducibility. You have to be able to do the same experiment, identical, and get the same result. They weren't able to do that. Not some other person trying to disprove them. Them, the people who did this experiment, couldn't reproduce it. And they said it was probably just them screwing up or not knowing what they were looking at because they weren't experts in brain dysfunction involving fiber formation, which is associated strongly with Alzheimer's, or fibril plaques. You're just trying to double talk this. I'm quoting their own fucking work. When your source says you're wrong, you're wrong. Aluminum salts were later found not to induce these changes in any animals. This was tested to death because obviously finding out that aluminum or iron or glass or silica or lead in the environment or in what we use, it might be dangerous. It's like Teflon. If you vaporize Teflon, it causes Teflon flu. No, it doesn't cause Alzheimer's. So where did this aluminum theme come from? There was found to be an aluminum increase in aluminum with aging in people. This is where that bioaccumulation comes from. But it was only found in the brain, right? No, that's an example of looking in one place and only seeing it there. Aluminum was found to accumulate in some older people. And it was disproportionately men. And it wasn't just the brain. Oh, that one. It was a study of bauxite miners. People who mine aluminum ore were found to have an accumulation of aluminum in the body because they fucking inhaled it all day long while they were mining it. They also had higher mercury levels, but let's ignore the mercury. And lead. Did you know that lead is used for a lot of the molds for making things out of aluminum? So you might detect lead. They don't do that for food and cookware kind of stuff. You can mold aluminum in silicon containers. You can also mold it in wood, Play-Doh, stuff like that. Does Play-Doh contain alumina? Aluminum is found in literally almost every form of clay on the planet. It's actually a primary compound in most of them. And those are used for molding things as well. Everything you've ever eaten off of, and maybe eaten, may have contained aluminum, and this is before we had elemental aluminum in shiny metal parts. But it has to cause Alzheimer's because you need to sell your homeopathic treatment that's supposed to leach it out of people's bodies by using, what was that again? Bentonite clay, which contains elemental aluminum as well as bound aluminum. But that's how homeopathy works. Extensive investigation has proven that aluminum has an unknown function or significance in the brain because you can find people who do not have Alzheimer's who have high levels of aluminum because they were also mining it. Alzheimer's has been around for a very long time, but suddenly you have to make it about aluminum cookware or something else you're selling. Even people who make cast iron skillets very quietly say, and it's not aluminum or anything, except that they make it involving aluminum in almost every step of the process to make the damned cast iron skillet. And yes, you can buy them, and yes, you can test for aluminum. It's actually something you can test for. 80% of cast iron skillets contain aluminum on the upper surface because it's involved in the molding process. It has aluminum in the outer surface, right where you're putting your eggs. Yeah, but what but? Chicken butt. Aluminum was seen inside of plaques, amyloid plaques, in the brains of people with Alzheimer's, which may or may not be directly related to every form of Alzheimer's, remember. Because, and this is the one case that I can't find the citation for, but everyone has taken this down. It's been thrown out. It's not in any peer-reviewed paperwork anymore. Because the people who were studying the Alzheimer's patients failed to ask really basic questions. What medications are they taking? Oh, they're all taking this medication. What is it made from? Oh, it has this material in it. But it's this big of a pill, but it uses this much medicine. What's the rest of the space filled with? Oh, it's packed with alumina. It's a filler material we use in pills. After they started having Alzheimer's symptoms, they were taking an anti-Alzheimer drug that instead of it being cut with calcium or something else to make it to where it would be digestible and bioavailable, they mixed it with aluminum. They had an aluminum containing compound in it that was readily available and readily absorbed. So what happened is, after the people already had Alzheimer's, and by the way, I should point out, they did check. The majority of people, if you're not aware of it, that were old that year, used cast iron skillets because they didn't use aluminum skillets. They didn't use aluminum cookware. They used old style iron cookware because cast iron doesn't fucking wear out as fast. These were mostly poor people at one time, so they learned to just buy what was available. Cast iron skillets are much more often resold in the past than they are now. Now it's mostly aluminum because they're just more available. These were people who had no exposure to aluminum cookware in over half of the cases. I'm going to say that. But this was the follow-up study where they found out the aluminum that they found in their bodies, not just their brains, had occurred because they were taking a medication that contained fucking aluminum. Aluminum is used as a cutting material. You can see old advertisements for, and our antacids are better because they contain calcium rather than aluminum. How many medicines contained aluminum compounds in the past? Well, now we can say the aluminum caused it. The citation you're looking up that they found it in Alzheimer's patients are based on literally just these two. One of them isn't even human patients. It's bunnies they injected on purpose. And they were wrong about the effects they found under a microscope because someone just did the same test and didn't find it. It's never been reproduced, and it's been thrown out. 1965 test, an experiment, is only brought up by homeopaths and conspiracy theorists. And the one about the aluminum found in human brains ignored the follow-up study that found out the majority of them, actually all of them, were taking aluminum cut anti-Alzheimer's medication. But you can keep saying it has to be connected some way. You can always weasel out of it. But the two sources people keep bringing up, one of them was literally them making a basic mistake and you not realizing they injected it into the brain to get the reaction. And the other one was because they weren't exposed to aluminum to cause it. You can't make that claim unless you can find a connection. And again, when they did the follow-up study on these people, case histories, they didn't have any aluminum products at all. And they weren't removed after they were dead or removed during the time they were alive when it was all aluminum. They didn't have anything. The most common aluminum item, if you're not old enough to know this, the most common aluminum items that you could find in the past that nobody wanted to use anymore were cups and stir containers. Really, nouveau, chic, futuristic looking housewares like aluminum lemonade pitchers and that sort of thing. I had some of those when I was a kid. In the 70s, these were sold a lot, and then people stopped selling them. Not because of something conspiracy theory-like, but because aluminum reacts to certain acidic foods, and it was found to be very bad for that. So people just went back to using plastics because that was more available, and that was also the new trending thing. And to glass and to metals that were safer as far as not reacting to it. Aluminum is a lot like copper. It has a very specific set of uses for food. It's great for flour and stuff like that. It has no reaction to it. Copper is used, if you're not aware of it, to make chocolates. It's also used to make cooking equipment material. But if you get elemental copper in your system, it'll make you sick as a dog and give you diarrhea. Especially if you do it for coffee. You can strip the copper off and it acts as you can get a coffee enema that way. But please do tell how aluminum causes Alzheimer's over and over again. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck with that.